That was a super long intro video. Anyway, I just cut it short because we want to go straight to the program. Hey guys, I'm really excited to be here and contribute whatever I can by doing what I love, which is making podcasts live. So I'm a podcaster and music enthusiast and NFT enthusiast. So I played a few dozen gigs in Singapore from 98 to 04 when I played drums for multiple local bands. Went on to work for a few crypto exchanges around Asia, in Beijing, China, and Singapore, including OOBTC and Huobi, and also joined the founding team of Engine Starter, a launchpad for blockchain gaming startups that help over 30 successfully raised funds via IDOs. We live stream a weekly show called Engine Starter Saloon that got 30,000 over downloads, and we really built a brand and community in blockchain gaming space via weekly AMAs and spotlighting NFT gaming startups. I had some fun doing my passion projects, producing and hosting shows under Podfest Asia, which is a network of over a dozen podcasts, including Bucket List Bands podcast, which recently pivoted into Bucket List Band DAO, which we'll be announcing sometime this weekend during our first ever town hall in Facebook audio rooms, Twitter spaces, and Discord. Our DAO is coming together to buy Wax Tracks records and hopefully for AD label as well, with incredible artists, bands, and IP, including Ministry, The Breeders, Pixies, Bauhaus, and more. I also had loads of fun interviewing organizers, keynote speakers at Rise Conference in Hong Kong, South by Southwest in Austin, the Mexico in Cologne, NFTNYC in New York, PopCon in Las Vegas, Art Basel, and the CentralCon in Miami, as well as innovators in the Web3 immersive tech world as well. We are taping the second episode of the Future is DAO podcast today, where we interview community builders, collectives, conference organizers, software-enabled communities, and DAO creators that are emerging in 2022. So one public announcement, if you want to catch replays of podcasts that we did spanning 2019 to 2022, do check out our link tree in the scrolling banner below. And for our second episode, we are super glad and privileged to speak to NFTNYC co-founder and producer Cameron Bale. Let's welcome him to the show.
Thanks for the intro, Wayne. Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you, and finally you put a face to a name, because we've been exchanging messages, I think, on LinkedIn for over a year now. And what transpired was an incredible trip to New York City. I had probably the best time of my life during the event, which has now blossomed into a festival, right? So I think I'll let you do the talking for the next 3 minutes. And perhaps, this is my favorite question of the show. First of all, give us a TLDR version on NFTNYC. What is it? And give us a Reader Digest version of who you are. How did you enter the NFT rabbit hole? Over to you, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Wayne. Okay, so the short story is who I am. My name's Cameron. I'm the co-founder and producer of NFTNYC, and how I came to become that is that I'm the director of marketing and product development of a platform called Cred. Cred is a subsidiary of a company called People Browser. We've been in business since 2008, and we've been really focused on helping brands create basically vertically integrated experiences. And so from 2008, we were very focused on social experiences, helping brands create their own social experiences for their community instead of sending people off to a Facebook page, for example. And then, fast forward a little bit, now we have a platform called NFT.Cred, which helps brands create vertically integrated NFT experiences, whether that's a marketplace or whether that's, integrations with existing systems or whatever it is, we help brands get there basically. And so we started that platform we launched the platform in 2018, and we were sort of doing the rounds like everyone does when they're launching a new company. And we were going out to all the different conferences in our industry. And at that time, everyone was just talking about ICOs. So we sort of found that when we went to these crypto conferences, everyone was, talking about ICOs, not necessarily doing a lot of work, but writing lots of white papers and making lots of money. And people like us who were actually building things, and particularly the NFT community, were sort of huddling in a corner, like getting excited about NFTs and the potential use cases of the technology. And so we realized there was, a need, there was a demand, and there was an opportunity to create a community event specifically for the NFT community. And that's really when NFT NYC was born. And the first one was held in February 2019.
This is fantastic. And of course, we always are very interested in a day in the life of someone like you, who's the co-founder and a producer of a wildly successful event that is now becoming, I think, the singular reason to visit New York City at least once a year now. So are most of your team members from the NFT Cred or the People Browser team as well?
Yeah. Look, so we're like I think most people that had an NFT platform or something in the NFT space over the last 18 months, we're seeing a huge amount of growth. Our goal is to be keep our team very, very small but have very, very good systems. And so we are seeing a growth. 2 years ago, NFTNYC, anyone that attended will recall that you received probably an email from me personally, every week or every second week. That was the same in 2020. And now moving forward to 2021, we had a team, we had about 3 or 4 of us. And then moving forward to 2022, we're seeing a little bit more growth on that too. But, we're improving our systems as to how we can serve the growing community and, sponsors, speakers, attendees, and everything like that.
This is brilliant. So I just want to share, my experience in New York again, because it was overwhelming. Attending so many, cool events, satellite events, after parties. And I think your event has grown into a festival already, and it has grown exponentially over the last 3 editions or more, right? So did you foresee that, in the beginning, I think when you first started out, was it in 2018 with your first edition, that you would actually scale like this? And maybe take us back to the beginning, like how hard it was to convince, like what you mentioned earlier, the ICO crowd at blockchain conferences. Yeah. I think we have all attended quite a number of those, right? And it was a very different atmosphere. And back in 2017 and 2018, like my experience at the time, when I was working for a crypto exchange, it was like such a different crowd. They're less artistic, they're less cool. And of course, the ICO crowd, like what you mentioned, they are writing tons of white papers and getting rich. So but the optimism, I think, was still overwhelmingly positive and exciting at the time. So tell us your thoughts, how it has blossomed into this place where all the cool kids from around the world in NFT are now hanging out in your city.
Looks like we lost you for a second there, Wayne.
Okay, is it better now? Can you hear me once again?
Yeah, we're good now. You're talking. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I was asking you, my experience was overwhelming at NFT.NYC. So take us back to the beginning, how hard it was to convince the ICO crowd.
Well, it wasn't that we needed to convince the ICO crowd. The hardest part in 2018, as we started planning the first event, which was February 2019, the hardest part was finding everyone, right? Because now, NFTs are a thing, and all you need to do is go on Twitter and you can find 1,000 companies or 1,000 projects or 1,000 artists or whatever it is that you're looking for. It's easy. But back then, the hardest thing was sort of identifying who the community was. So, NFTs were something at that stage where no one really knew what the use cases would be or what industries people would be in the technology in. And, of course, one of the earliest use cases was art and gaming and collectibles. And so we started to find some projects like that and then start slowly sort of snowball or grow that community. But then, continue researching to try to find people that were doing interesting things with this technology and see which other industries were we could anticipate would be disrupted by NFTs. So I think that was the biggest challenge, finding who the community actually was. And then, of course, convincing them to come. And so we ended up getting about 500 people to the first event. And, it really reassured us that it had legs and that, NFTs were a thing and that it was poised for some sort of growth.
So you mentioned that as recently as 2020, right, where only 500 people showed up. What were you feeling at the time, when the attendee numbers stagnated in the beginning? Were you anticipating that 2021 would be the year that NFT broke and you will achieve like wild exponential growth where like 500,000 people sign up to attend the event?
No, not at all. And in fact, it was quite the opposite. So it was like 500 people back then was great. That was big. So we didn't, the huge surprise to us was 2021, and to go from being an event that we thought would just sort of roll along and have around 500 people, and then maybe grow to 1,000 people or so on. That would be great growth, and we'll cover our costs hopefully, and be able to continue doing it. But thankfully, something happened at the start of 2021, and the world learned what an NFT was, and there's so many more creators and projects and things going on in the space that the 2021 event saw such great growth.
I think we have to talk about what Jodee Rich, right, actually said during, I think, the keynote opening together with Gary V. I think he was actually getting Gary V to explain like what are the reasons why NFT exploded in 2021, right? And one of the things that struck me was when Jodee mentioned that it was because of Clubhouse, it was because of the Beeple art sale, yeah, and also because of Gary V. So are you belonging to the same school of thought as your co-founder, Jodee, in terms of like thinking that these are the three key factors for the explosive growth? And perhaps even tell us, how did you meet Jodee, and how is the relationship in terms of like him working with you as your co-founder? And what can we expect from this summer's NFT.NYC that's going to take place in June?
Cool. You've covered a bit of ground there. So in terms of like, what really kicked off this, renaissance of 2021, I do agree with Jodee. I think that, we who have been in the space, or we have been, building things with NFTs or collecting NFTs since prior to that happening, we know why the technology is promising, or we know what, we know the use cases, and we know the value that NFTs can deliver or are already delivering to us. And so, people are sort of already converted, but then all it really took was getting that message out to more and more people. And so when you have mainstream adoption, when you have like mainstream audiences being reached and told this message or shown it in a digestible way, that's where we see growth. And so, Gary V is an example. He's an amazing, incredible marketer. And he's someone who can share a message in really digestible means. And so he's reaching an audience and explaining to them very simply that this little thing, which could be as simple as a doodle, that's something that he's drawn on a piece of paper and then scanned and then put on, and now it's a VFriend, can carry with it some sort of value. And the Beeple sale, Jodee would put it to say that $69 million is the world's cheapest global marketing campaign to lift an entire industry. And, Metacoven of MetaPurse, who actually made that purchase, he's been able to sort of stand up as a bit of a poster boy for the community, because he's continued to stand behind that investment. He's continued to invest in different projects and show that he's committed to this space. So, I think people seeing that, and then that being sort of the top of the funnel for them to learn about the specific use case that interests them, whether it's gaming or whether it's art or whether it's collectibles or any other industry that's using the tech. I agree with Jodee that that's really three of the key events that have seen the massive amount of adoption. And so, you asked about how I met Jodee. Jodee, like I mentioned earlier, NFT Cred is our brand or our platform, and it's a subsidiary or a product of our company, People Browser. I started working with Jodee about 10 years ago with People Browser. Jodee's our CEO at People Browser, and he's always been someone that has, he has a personal reputation of being someone that's been on cutting edge and sort of taking bets on new technologies, basically seeing value in it, seeing potential in a new technology, and exploring how this could be rolled out to various communities. And so in 2014, separate from NFTs, we did our first integration into a blockchain for one of our clients. And so we sort of started to understand like, okay, blockchain technology was something that would create value to the communities that we were serving, which primarily were consumer brands and we call them social influencers, but people that are creators, people that are creating content. And so then in 2017, 2018, when we started to understand that, blockchain can also support this concept of an NFT, which was a way of registering content on a blockchain, we could see how that could immediately create value to those communities of IP holders and creators.
just like you, Jodee is a totally cool guy, and he's definitely my guy. I think one of the things that struck me also when I was setting up this interview between Jodee and another crypto exchange, right? And I was producing that interview. He mentioned that, perhaps the NFT NYC is our generation's Woodstock moment. So do you also agree with this school of thought? And if you're going to write a blurb for NFT NYC and to describe it in 10 words or less, right? What would you call NFT NYC?
Well, I hesitate to throw labels at it like Woodstock because it is such a powerful name. The Woodstock sort of language came from a few different people that have said it to us. I think there was a journalist who talked about it and used that language, but then also Ken Bozak, who's a figure in the NFT community, who's been involved in a lot of different projects, and he's a huge NFT collector. He was quoted in the New York Times article by saying, "This to me is Woodstock," and I think by Ken saying that to him it's Woodstock, I think what that represents is that for a lot of people, this is a culmination of a new culture and people that have adopted this culture very early on, be it, the people that are collecting, the people that are creating, the people that are building projects in this space. What NFT NYC in 2021 fairly serendipitously represented was the culmination of all of those people together for the first time, because COVID came and affected physical events. A lot of us weren't able to leave our houses, and so we were building communities online. But to actually get everyone in one space where it was this melting pot of all these different, projects, all these different cultures, all these different people, all thinking about the same sort of values, I think that's what made it so powerful.
Yes, indeed. And we understand that this year in 2022, NFT NYC will be held sometime in June, right? And this year is brought forward. I think for those who aren't familiar, the original edition was actually held sometime in February, right? Even earlier. So like this year is going to be in June. So that's like less than 5 months to get tickets and book our flights. Could you maybe enlighten my audience? Was the weather playing a huge part in terms of like moving forward the date this time from November, which is your slot in the calendar last year? So if the answer is yes, if it's due to weather, I'm actually super thrilled because I've never visited New York during the summer. It's always like in between November and January when it was snowing, right? So that's like a double-edged sword. Like you would definitely love to see snow, especially for people like me from Singapore, from that part of the world where we don't get snow. But it could also get too cold to get out there. Sometimes you just want to stay in a hotel room and just not get out into the cold, right? So tell us more about the reason for this shift in the calendar.
Well, yeah. So the first year, like to reiterate, this is a community event, right? So we try to make it fairly accessible. So price for a 3-day event, it's pretty cheap. For about $500, you can go to a 3-day conference, get food, go to all the satellite events. There's a lot of value that we're delivering. We try to make it accessible. But similarly, hosting an event in New York can cost a lot of money. And for us, the organizers that are actually underwriting all of those costs, the first 2 years, we hosted the event in February for, a fairly simple reason, which is that there was not a lot of competition. There was not very many, conferences happening at the same time. So, people's schedules were open. And second to that, venues were cheaper. So we could actually afford to book out a venue and underwrite the costs and hopefully cover those costs. 2021 was a little bit different because, if all had gone to plan and COVID didn't happen, we probably would have still been in February. But we, of course, couldn't do anything in February 2021. And we decided to make the commitment that we would host the event as soon as we could, or as soon as we felt that it was safe for people to travel and get there. And so we originally slated the event for October. And then in the end, we ended up growing and growing, and we outgrew the venues that we were planning to use in October. And so we needed to move it back another week to the first week of November. And so this year coming up in 2022, we're bringing it forward again. I'm not sure how far forward we'll keep bringing it, but the great news is that in June, the weather's going to be awesome in New York, and it's going to be a really different experience, which will be great.
And the tickets are already on sale. And I think 100,000 people already registered from all over the world, right? And your early bird tickets, I believe, are 100% sold out. So what do you think? What's been the reason for this overwhelming initial reception to 2022's event? And do you think there will be the same last-minute rush for tickets and people feeling FOMO? And should they repeat that same mistake again and wait?
You said, first of all, what's the reason for the initial surge in ticket sales? I think like one thing that everyone in this community knows about is FOMO. And last year we ended up getting to a point where we would sell out of tickets, and then Jodee and I would have a conversation and say, we're sold out. What should we do? Should we, get more space so that more people can come? Should we, oversell the venue in case some people don't turn up? What should we do? And so we sort of kept having these moments of like sold out, and then, maybe another release of tickets a little bit later, depending on the demand. And in the end, last year, we ended up with, I think, a wait list of about 3,000 people that didn't get tickets in the end. And so, to that point, this year, we're seeing an early surge in ticket sales. We've had over 1,000 people register, as you mentioned. And I think it's for that reason. People want to get in early because they had a good time last year. If they make the commitment early, they're getting a little bit of a cheaper ticket, and they feel safe that they actually have one and they won't miss out.
I remember I attended one of the talks by the Change DAO CEO, and it was one of the many recurring narratives that I keep hearing again and again and again. And especially for an NFT event, right, when the word DAO, keep resurfacing, that really caught my attention. And in fact, I think by attending NFTNYC, one of my takeaways is that I should start a podcast surrounding this topic, and I actually call it The Future is DAO. Hence, you're here on the second episode of this new podcast show. So just want to ask you for some of your perspective and some of your thoughts about DAO. Since we keep hearing the word DAO in 2022 already in the first week, So how much of the focus will be still on this topic, DAO, this year? And personally, what DAOs have you joined? Caught your attention? Do you think that this is the year of the DAO?
Do I think that it's the year of the DAO? Maybe. I hope so. I think that DAOs, I think the hardest part in convincing mainstream audiences about DAOs is that there's in a lot of cases not recourse. So passes or paths for recourse. So when something goes wrong in a DAO, like for example, if NFTNYC was simply a DAO and someone bought a ticket and then had a problem, like they need a path for recourse. So who do they talk to? How do they get help? There needs to be some sort of team at the center of it, or someone that's guiding that community. I do know about Change DAO, like Pleaser DAO. There's a lot of really cool DAOs out there. I think it was Pleaser DAO that recently bought that Wu-Tang album that was released, and they're sharing ownership of that, which is awesome. I think we've already received over 500 speaker applications this year, and there's a great percentage of those that are talking about different DAOs. So I think there'll be a lot of content on the topic for people that are interested.
Do you predict that DAOs will start buying even household name assets in media or even consumer products? Like, we heard about the Buzzy Constitution DAO, right? Which tried to buy a copy of the US Constitution. And then we heard about Links DAO just a couple of weeks ago. I think they are crowdfunding together with thousands of members trying to buy a golf course as well. So we know that, post-pandemic, there are quite a number of assets or even brands available for sale at attainable price points. So do you think that more of these DAO communities, or even the people who are going to apply to speak at your event, when I talk about DAOs, are they also doing this in terms of using this as a tech medium to do crowdfunding, or to actually to achieve a particular or specific mission? Like the DAO that we have set up, it's basically to buy a record label that we love, and to basically own or take over the IP of the bands. They're not doing much these days, and hopefully we can turn those IP and refresh it and fund their next tour or their reunion, for example. So do you think that all these DAOs making splashy investments for these either well-known brands or even projects, there will be even more groundswell of interest as an alternative investment vehicle?
I think so. I think the core thing for a DAO to work is the community. And if you have a strong community and everyone's goals or interests or mission is aligned and they share the same passion, and some people come to that passion with come to the party with certain skills or abilities to do things that can advance the mission of the DAO. I think so. Like you look at even just communities like Reddit, for example, where people can band together on a common topic, and they can someone will come with great research skills, and they'll figure out like due diligence on a particular topic, for example, and they can all band together to share their talents and their money. So resources, talent, and energy to actually reach these goals. So I totally agree with you. I think that's right.
And I think you made a really good point about it's still yet to be seen how effective DAOs can be as owners of actual, brands or companies or even events, right? But I think we are all looking forward eagerly to find out what will transpire and how it pans out until the end of the year. So let's move on back to your NFTNYC event. I think last year, right? In fact, it was just a couple of months ago in November 2021. I was looking forward to actually, have your tickets as NFTs, or, to actually be able to like trade, some of your tickets on secondary markets like OpenSea, for example. But unfortunately, last year there wasn't, it wasn't an NFT ticketing medium, or should I say, tickets were not issued as NFTs. Although there might be some pro apps that were given out, right, with utility and benefits. So how about this year? Would there be NFT ticketing for NFTNYC 2022?
Yeah, look, there'll absolutely be a component to it. This is something that so many people ask, and a common question or a common point of feedback that we've received. But what most people don't realize is that in 2019 and in 2020, we did actually have NFT tickets. So what we found, though, as we experimented with different platforms, was that at that stage, NFT ticketing was fairly young, and it didn't provide all of the things that a conference organizer, for example, needs to be able to deliver the experience that a conference attendee expects. So it boils down to lots of different experiences. Like a conference attendee expects to be able to go to the door, scan the QR code, and get a name badge printed out, which has their name and their title and their company and the appropriate level of access that they're given. And we haven't found, or at that stage, we had not yet found a system that would allow us to do that as the organizer. So it's something that we are really committed to. We have done it in the past, 2019 and 2020. 2021 attendees will be receiving a special airdrop or a special surprise that's coming that does have some additional benefits to it. So instead of an actual NFT ticket that would grant you access to the event, it'll be sort of like an NFT ticket that you can take away from the event that carries with it some benefits. But look, people have also asked, what are the industries that we think are going to be disrupted the most moving forward with NFTs? And ticketing is absolutely the top of my list, because there's so many problems in the ticketing space. We've even seen it with NFTNYC tickets, where people are going on the resale market and trying to sell a ticket, but then they don't necessarily actually have it, and they're ripping someone off, or they're selling a ticket to someone that's fake, or it's already been redeemed or something like that. And so there's a lot of problems that can be solved with NFT ticketing. We're seeing some really interesting companies show that they're interested in this space, like Ticketmaster. So there's some big players coming into this space, but anyone that has an NFT ticketing platform, my biggest reflection as being a sort of coming from a more traditional event organization perspective, using platforms like Eventbrite, is that new systems should be integrating with those more established systems so that they can deliver to event organizers the benefits and the systems that they're used to, rather than trying to sort of rebuild the wheel.
That's a great idea. And we just hit the 32nd minute mark. So I just, before I reluctantly let you go, I just want to squeeze into last questions. Yeah. So
sure.
Please stay patient with me. Just want to ask you for your thoughts about whether you have any particular thought on diversification in terms of like, the effects on the ecosystem, right? Like, for example, like I went for last year's event, and there were friends who really wanted to go, but it's costly, especially during pandemic times, to travel. one PCR test could cost $300 USD, right? So you have to do like multiple PCR tests, and that's not taking into account like accommodation in New York is really expensive, the flights, of course. So like those who can't afford to attend, what would you what would be your approach in terms of making it more affordable to those who can't afford to turn up or to show up? And how do you give these minority communities a voice as well? Like I know that you're already starting to accept applications for speakers, right? How about putting those more diverse speakers on stage that are not just big brands or established players, either in the NFT or the blockchain space, or just merely celebrities, right? Although we all welcome, more Quentin Tarantino would definitely be super cool. I think that's one of the highlights of attending NFTNYC last year, to be able to meet Quentin Tarantino. So how does someone like me, for example, with a strange Singaporean accent, who podcast his way out of Singapore, just to get heard or have a stage in NFTNYC to tell a story of how I podcast my way to this NFT metaverse Web3 space, and with NFT, and trying to set up a DAO where we're going to buy wax tracks or 480 records. So how do they stand a chance?
I'm so glad that you asked that. We have a few different core values for our company and for our event. And one of them is diversity and giving people, giving as many people that have something interesting to talk about a voice and giving them a chance to get on stage. So last year, for example, we had over 1,000 speaker applications and we accepted 51% of them. And so, if you look at that range is extremely diverse. There's sort of the 1%, which are the Gary V's or the Quentin Tarantinos or the Busta Rhymes, which sort of fall into the celebrity category, right? That they're a draw card, but they're getting on stage because we know that people are going to want to see them. Then there's people that come to us that have, a great experience with speaking. And, some of those people are just fantastic, engaging speakers, and they want to talk about some particular NFT topic. And so they're going to provide the audience with a great experience. But one thing that we really focus on is how we can get anyone that has an interesting idea on stage. So that could be, it could be you talking about your DAO. It could be anyone. And they could be, young, they could be a child, they could be a young artist who has made some money with NFTs, selling their illustrations, for example. So diversity is something that has been a big focus for us. In fact, one of the criticisms that we had of the first year was very vocal from someone called Kelly LaValle. And she's a big advocate for feminists in the space, or feminism in the space. And she said to us, "Oh, guys, what are you doing? You only had, this many women on stage." And I think it was 19% of our speakers, for example, were women. And we were like, "Oh, we know that there's a problem in this space because, it's mainly made up of white guys, young white males are the NFT demographic, or at least was." And so we said, can you help us? And so she went out to all of these different communities and groups that she was a member of, where she knew that there were women doing really interesting things in the NFT community. She encouraged them, to tell them, this is a place for you. Don't be scared. Get on stage, share what you have to say. And we ended up getting a huge surge in female applications for speaking. But, with the growth of the event, we actually sort of went backwards. We went from, I think, 19% to 18% women, but we had thousands more applications. So it is something that we're always thinking about. My sort of recommendation or request from anyone listening is that, if you have an idea, or if you're part of a community where that there's good ideas, please, encourage people to apply to speak, because we're really looking for people from, everywhere, all sorts of backgrounds and all sorts of perspectives to get on stage.
My last question for you: what would you change about NFTNYC?
Oh, what would I change? That's a good question. I think if I could snap my fingers and do one thing, I think the NFT ticketing challenge would be solved. I think that's something that speaks to dedication to the technology. And if we could show that immediately, I would love to do it. Otherwise, I think, I wish it could be longer. it goes by pretty quick. And unfortunately for me, I don't get a whole lot of time to enjoy it. I spend a lot of time running around making sure that things are happening and going ahead as they should. So I think that's it from me.
I think you nailed it on the head. At least 2 weeks, and so that we have more time as well to extend our stay in NYC and to watch all the Broadway shows. I was only able to watch David Byrne for his, I think, American Utopia show. I wanted to watch Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill Broadway musical, but I didn't have enough time. So if you make this a longer event, in between we could just squeeze in, more concerts, more Broadway musicals, and New York is a fantastic place to be. Now you have given us, a valid reason to escape, from Singapore and just to fly to New York once a year just to attend this amazing event. Thank you so much, Cameron, and thank you for your patience and allowing me to ask you so many questions and overextending this. So, any last words or message to my audience?
If you're interested in attending, please buy your ticket early before they sell out. If you're interested in speaking, please apply early because we've already had 500 plus applications in the first week or so. Please, if you want to get involved, please get involved as early as you can.
Thank you so much. And I will see you in real life, my friends, in June 2022 in New York City. I'll see you really, really soon. Take care of yourself. Send my regards to Jodee Rich as well. Take care of everyone back there in NYC. Goodbye.
Thanks, Mike.
Cheers.